So I want to talk about emotions again today. Our kids have emotions all the time. Some of them we think of as positive emotions, like we try to elicit these emotions from our kids. They're happy, they're loving, they laugh because they're joyful. The other ones, not so much. So they're angry, they may scream at you on the floor, they may pull a blanket over their head and say, I wish that I was a rock right now. Right? So these emotions can be positive, they can be negative, but we already talked about one of the defining features in neuroscience for emotions is that they elicit a gut or like a visceral reaction from us. This is important, and this is something that we forget as adults. And I think we spend a lot of our adult time trying to like dampen down the negative emotions and protect our kids from them so that they don't have to feel them. But when I ask my 9-year-old, how do you know if you're having an emotion? He legitimately says, I feel it down here, right? Because it's true. This is our body response, and this is neuroscience. So we have two areas in our brains that are in our cortex that allow us to kind of modulate this stuff coming in. So we've got an area kind of over on the sides called the insula that actually is set up just to receive information coming in from our internal organs about the state of our bodies. Okay, so the back of it, the insula, receives its information. The front of it is able to process the visceral input coming in, and it can allow us to experience these emotions. So if it gets really negative things coming in from our internal organs, then the front of the insula is going to say, oh, that's disgust. If it gets really positive things coming in, then it might say, oh, I feel joy. There's another area in the brain that we think of as part of this limbic system, and it's the cingulate cortex. And it's actually like if you cut if you like kind of peer down into the brain in between your two hemispheres, there's this area right in front of, like on top of the corpus callosum, called the cingulate cortex, also known as limbic lobe. And that primarily is responsible for allowing us to feel these things when we're in emotional situations. So the cingulate cortex is what allows us to kind of modulate that stuff coming in from our gut so we can respond to it, and then we can control in some ways, what goes back down to it. Should we still be in this state? Can we get out of this state of emotion? So there are two areas in the cortex that allow us to kind of be conscious of what we're doing. And this idea of self-regulation is really important because we also need to be able to appraise a situation and decide whether we're in a negative situation or a positive situation. So there are areas in the prefrontal lobe, this area in the front, that particularly go straight to our two centers that we've already talked about are involved with emotion. So we've got the amygdala, which is involved in processing things that are fearful emotions and negative emotions. And we've got the nucleus accumbens, is involved in making us feel reward or like a positive value of an emotion. And so we have these two basically value centers, the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens. And our prefrontal lobe kind of coordinates everything that we know about the situation. So if there is a parking spot that we want, have never parked in before and we pass, it's a neutral stimuli. It doesn't have any value to us. But if we're late for a doctor's appointment and we have 3 kids on board, then all of a sudden we see that parking spot, and that's great value to us. It's very positive. And we go into the doctor's appointment, we come back out, we've got a parking ticket. All of a sudden that same parking spot has now a negative connotation. So it has decreased value. Right. And so in this way, we have an area in our prefrontal cortex that allows us to constantly be apprising our situation and making these decisions or value judgments based on it. And then they're using the nucleus accumbens and the amygdala to kind of be constantly weighing the value. And so I think that when I think about emotions and our kids, I realize that they're both valuable, the amygdala and the nucleus accumbens, as a balance, like a seesaw, and that if you only focus on the positive emotions, the rewards, the nucleus accumbens, then the system doesn't work. We're not able as people to kind of listen to our own gut responses and then act accordingly. And I think we should be teaching our kids more how to actually listen to the inside of our bodies, because the inside of our bodies is what is driving this. This is what allows like the viscera or the internal responses to be actually things that drive our behavior, that drive what we go towards, our motivations. And so for me, kind of as a parent, this is a little bit of a wake-up call that we've been designed to weigh the positive and weigh the negative and make decisions based on that. And if we only build up the positive and we never talk about the negative or how to process the negative and actually how we can perceive these visceral gut reactions as good, as things that are avoiders of behavior, that we're really doing our kids a disservice, because we're depriving them of half of a functional system. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about emotion and the brain areas that are involved with it. So thanks for listening. Join us every day in May for a new video.